This is placeholder media, replaced to take full advantage of this template.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Brandon's Face. It's the podcast about a playlist. My name is Jonathan Beardsley.
I am Brandon May.
We hope you're all doing well. We are continuing on with our Best of 2024 series. We're going to be covering pop and R&B this week. That includes everything from basic mainstream pop, dance pop, some indie pop, Latin pop, K-pop, any other pop you can really think of. Some of it might trickle over into our indie episode as well, but we'll try and notate everything as best we can. It's been an interesting year in pop nonetheless. We've had some virality, as we always do. But what did you kind of think of this year as opposed to the past few years in pop?
Pop is in a really good place right now, John. It's funny like how good of a place it actually is in. We've got all of these artists that some of them are brand new, and it's funny that we're not even gonna be chatting about Chapel Roan this year because of the year that she had, but we talked about her last year, you know? So, but
Well,
it's go ahead.
I mean, I was going to say we can talk about Chapel a little bit, but we will not be talking about Chapel's album this year.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think the point I'm trying to get at is that we have a bunch of new artists, a bunch of hungry artists, and a bunch of people who are kind
Mhm.
of doing, like you said, this bleeding thing within genres and kind of blending a bunch of things together, and it comes out as what you can really broadly describe as pop. But everything in this episode, all, all all of the pop in 2024 is in such a good place. And I mean, I was right last year. We got a lot of K-pop this year, but that wasn't the dominant tone,
No?
which is interesting to me. That we got a lot of different stuff, and I'm excited to get into all of my favorite albums because going through everything, man, I have a lot of very high scoring pop albums this year.
I do as well. To echo on what you were saying, it is a great year for pop. I mean, we've only done two of these episodes. We did EDM last week. So compared to that, I had way more strong contenders, runners up, I guess I should say, for this episode than I did last week. And it was harder to pick a clear-cut favorite. But keeping the conversation broad for a bit, I like what you touched on with K-pop because it still was everywhere, but I do feel like it started to plateau in a way. I feel like I feel like it is hitting maybe a saturation point where it's so big that it's hard to see the decline at the moment. But it's also weird to classify most of it as K-pop anymore because it's a lot of them just doing full-on English songs. A lot of them, I mean, we talked about this year. I put on the playlist this week. Great music, but almost indistinguishable from American pop at this point. Latin pop, on the other hand, continues to dominate worldwide in a way we don't really understand in America. You look at, like you said, this new crop of artists. Feed is one of the newer Latin artists that I've kind of been seeing these past like 2, 3 years. FEID is the pronunciation. I don't think we've covered any of his albums, but they're all doing like Bad Bunny, Peso Pluma numbers streaming wise when they come out. Every song he's on gets almost 1 billion streams. It's insane where Latin pop is at right now. I do have a few Latin pop releases this year to talk about, but in the States, we're not really seeing the domination of foreign pop the way we were post-pandemic and up until this year. It feels like we're kind of going more centralized or even more European as well with like Charlie XCX and stuff. But worldwide, wherever you're at, pop is just in a great place, man. And I think there's so many new artists to be excited about, and maybe not new as in they just released their first song or their first album, although there are a few of those, but new as in like new pop stars, whether you like
Right.
some of them or not. Charlie, Chappell, Sabrina, they're all tier one as of 2024, in which they weren't prior. I mean, I guess that's arguable in some fandoms, don't come at me, but that's just kind of like my broad thoughts on it as well. I agree with you. It's been an interesting year nonetheless. But I do think that in our personal lists, I don't know yours yet, the foreign pop scene might not be as strong as it was the last few years.
Yeah, we'll see.
Before we get into it, one more thing. Pop is continuing to go country. we got big country releases, and we do not do a country episode. So we can just touch on those right now because neither of them are on my list. Beyonce released her highly acclaimed Cowboy Carter album. You enjoyed that one a bit more than I did.
What
Just
was
didn't
that
really hit
tone
for
on
me.
the what was that tone of yours on the highly acclaimed?
I mean, I'm seeing it on most year-end lists from major publications, so it is highly acclaimed. I'm not. I don't know, man. I'm not
You
going
don't
to
have to
pretend
defend yourself. I agree.
I'm a big fan of it. I don't think it's a bad album, but it was not for me stylistically. Few country albums are like the other big one, Post Malone's F1 Trillion. Another album you liked a little bit more than I did. Both of these are, whether you liked the albums or not, Beyonce and Post Malone are two of the biggest artists in the world, and them going country does start to indicate where things might go. And we even know as early as next year, Lana Del Rey's next release is confirmed to be a country album. Where do you think this is going next? More country, or do you think it's going to plateau a bit?
I think the country will plateau a bit. I think country was in for a second. I could be wrong, you know, like I said, I was wrong last year about K-pop really dominating, and so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're really moving in a country way, and we don't cover a lot of country, but it is ubiquitous out in the world.
Mhm.
I have, I talked about how, I have, a lot of coworkers who bump music pretty much all the time. And you get a lot, like there was a lot of pop smoke today. There was even some 90s alternative, but
Sure.
everybody is okay when country comes on. A lot of people have a problem with rap coming on all the time. A lot of people are like, please don't put that fucking techno shit on. A lot of people don't like metal, but nobody complains when there's country on. And there's been
Interesting.
notable releases that we didn't cover this year because it's not our scene, but Morgan Wallen is just
Yeah,
dominating in
yeah,
country right now. And arguably that was also pop. We're not going to talk about it this year
yeah.
on this episode, but arguably country is still pop. And I think
Ding, ding,
artists like
ding.
I think like artists like Post Malone and Beyonce dabbling their toes, they're really just trying to get a little bit of that market share. I think
Mhm.
Lana Del Rey marrying a alligator wrangler is or a crocodile wrangler, one of those. No, nobody come after me. It's
She's
one of
just
those.
living her truth.
Is right. I mean, she's got to have some Everglades country in her discography now. I mean, I can't blame her for that.
If this is
So
all for the album, props.
mad respect, Lana. Mad respect.
Oh man, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. I think that was my point that I wanted to get into before it all. It was just pop isn't, or country is now considered pop, whereas 20 years ago, I think it would have been considered rock and roll. And I think the country music scene is embracing that more than they ever have. And they are still one of the few genres that actually buy new music. That's a big reason artists go that way. I can't blame them. It's a weird climate. I'm not a big fan of that style of music, although there are artists and releases in the genre I like. I do have a feeling we're gonna have to cover a little bit more of it next year than we did this year, but only time will tell. Are you ready to talk about our favorite albums of 2024, man?
I am.
All right, I'm gonna go first just because there's zero mystery with mine. Charlie XCX Brat is my pop album of the year, and I think it's kind of unquestionably the pop album of the year, whether you were whether you were along for the ride in terms of Brat Summer or not. It was everywhere. It was a meme. It was, I mean, not controversial, but like when the rollout started, people were not really on board with the aesthetic direction, and it just turned out to be a stroke of marketing genius, really. Turns out I love the actual music on the album and not just the memes of the album, although I do think they're both quite potent. I had the chance to catch the live show around that one. That further solidified this as my choice. And as we get into my runners up, this was not an easy choice from like my favorite artist releasing new music this year perspective, but it was an easy choice in terms of easily my most listened to album this year. And I just think when you consider everything about 2024, it was Charlie's year. What is your favorite pop and or R&B album of 2024?
Um, I actually took a long time to think about this, and it is the Maria's Submarine.
Beautiful. Uh, Great pick. Tell me why.
Just, just man, it's got this gorgeous. I really loved Cinema. That kind of solidified me as a fan, and I
Mhm.
really thought that their follow up was going to be as good. I really didn't think I was going to like it even more. It's got this dream aspect to it. It's Maria's voice is just perfect for the style of music they do. The instrumentation, the bass lines on this, I mean everything about it, man. It's psychedelic. There's like moments where not traditionally, but like there's moments where it's heavy on it. I love a lot of the little tiny little Latin hits that they put in.
Mhm.
I am a gigantic fan of this album. I gave it
Uh,
a 9 when we reviewed it,
yeah.
and it's right there, man.
Yeah, it might even be a 10 at this point, man. They might be two for two in terms of that. It's all subjective, I guess. I agree. This is in my runners up at near the top. This album is beautiful, and like we were talking about at the top of the show, this one kind of could slide into a few different categories. It's definitely in the dream pop indie rock realm of things. Uh, it's a beautiful album. I think her voice has only gotten better since Cinema, and I that's one of my favorite albums maybe ever. This is one hell of a follow-up, and learning the story behind it and how it almost never even happened makes it all that much more special. Did
Yeah.
Brat end up in your runner-ups at all?
Of course it did. I gave it between an 8 and a 9. I think it's settled at an 8 for me this
Okay.
for this album. But man, like you said, it's undeniably 2024 was Charlie XCX's year. She released Brat. She called Kamala Brat, which mobilized untold millions of people to go vote for who they wanted to be the president in a country where Charlie doesn't even fucking live. She hosted SNL. She hosted and did double duty on SNL, where she also performed. She has been everywhere, gigantic tour with Troye Sivan. Honestly, she deserves it, man. She's had quite a few hits, and she's had this like cult following for
Been like a
ever, right?
10-year climb,
Yeah,
man.
for like ever, right? And I'm so glad that she had what was arguably the album of 2024. And bro, in a year that's so big for her, because in a year where Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter, Chapel Roan was dominating, I mean, along with all of the other music that was just in the pop realm. In a world where she releases something and it still wins over that many people and becomes just injected with so much virality, I am so happy for her.
So the answer to the question, are you still bumping that, is kinda,
Oh
sometimes.
yeah, I was singing 360 on my way to the office, you
Such a
know?
jam. Such a jam. All right, let's get into our runner-ups. I've got a handful here. Starting off with another one of my most obvious. It's Gallant, his album Zinc. This one, another one that could easily be slotted into like three different genres, but I'm gonna put it more in the alt pop R&B realm of things. This is a beautiful album. I hesitate to say best. I think all three of his albums are great, but I'm kind of a stan, so my opinion is extremely biased. This one is special though, man. He released like that collab project late last year that I was a big fan of, but finally getting a new solo full length from him for the first time since 2019, Sweet Insomnia, was worth the wait, man. There's so many songs, Crimes of Compassion, Fly on the Wall, that Osaka version. Cold Star, Siberia, Monorail. I could literally name the track list just off memory like that because of how much I've been listening to it and will continue to do so. I love this album. Did you consider this album pop? We didn't really talk about this one beforehand.
We're doing a pop R&B podcast this time, this time around, John. And honestly, it doesn't really matter because this dude's voice is just fucking insane.
Yeah.
He has leveled up in a considerable way since you first showed me him, what, like almost 10 years ago now, maybe a little
Yep.
less than that. Uh, this album is great, man. It's not in my immediate runners up, but I did give it an 8, somewhere between an 8 and a 9 when I reviewed it. It's right there. I listened to it again this week. Crimes of Compassion is such a fucking good song, and the
Beautiful.
guitar work on this album is amazing. He really did, in my opinion, justice to rhythm and blues, and he did that in such a way that should resonate with a bunch of R&B fans, but for some reason R&B fans on a global scale are just stuck in the early 2000s. So that's another
Yeah,
conversation.
I think his music it is a completely other conversation. We'll get into that more in 2025, I feel like. But yeah, I feel like he kind of talked about beforehand this one not necessarily feeling as R&B as the last few has. He always kind of leaves it up to the fans to decide what they call his music. I guess that's always what you have to do. But I think that songs like the one he has with I'm Neo now on here, that one Centigrade is the name of that song. That one is definitely R&B, but I think he's kind of more expanding the definition of what modern R&B is more than making like what I would consider a rock album at this point. But it's beautiful, man. Yeah, whenever he did Testarossa music with Zoo is when I think I showed you him for the first time.
Right.
I actually talked to him on Twitch when he was planning his set list the other night, and I asked him if he's
That's
ever performed that, and he was like, I think once at a festival, like he doesn't really like to do songs like that unless the other artist is there. But could you imagine hearing Testarossa music live? That's fucking insane.
Yeah, man. With his voice live, yeah, that's cool. I'm pretty sure Zoo dropped it when I saw him in 2016, although I could be wrong.
Yeah. All right, man. What's your next runner up?
Lola Young, this wasn't meant for you
Fuck
anyways.
yes. Yes, dude. Beautiful album.
I honestly, man, it was a toss up. I listened to this album and the Maria's album like 14 times this week,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't choose until today which one I liked more, and so we'll call this one the actual like for sure runner up. I like both of them the same amount. This album
This is
kind of,
1B.
yeah, this one kind of blew me away, man.
Yeah. No
Um,
skips.
like I was so impressed with this album, and I continue to be extremely impressed with this album. There's bangers, there's like softer tracks on it. There's just incredible thought that went into it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And her voice is so special. I was thinking about it the other day, and there's like one artist on every Coachella lineup that ends up getting this like viral treatment, and whether or not that's fan driven or not is irrelevant. And 2022, I believe it was Fred again. Last year it was Chapel Roan. I think this is Lola Young's year at Coachella, and I'm
Yes.
glad
I
that she
love that.
got I'm glad that she got what a slot as high as she did, and I hope they put her in a tent that grows exponentially in her crowd size between weekends, because she deserves it, man. This album blew me the fuck away. So
Like Kendrick says, she deserves it all, man. This is so fucking good. I'm glad you picked it. It's in my runner up, like third as well. This album is so good, dude. I'm huge fan of her last two projects before it. We ended up covering her last one earlier this year on like a slow week, so we were kind of up to speed on this going in. But even going back through those other two, this is her magnum opus and sets the bar for anything she releases to top. It's not just a no skips. It is so good. Every little decision in it, music wise, vocal wise, is just so well thought out, so well executed. She has just this raw emotion in her voice that she's not afraid to tap into that you don't hear in a lot of other pop nowadays. I think she is great for the genre. I really hope that that's the case, that she is the one to blow up at that level next year. There's kind of been, I guess, like the first leak in the dam. We'll see the rest of that, and that is her feature on the Tyler album, which when it came out, I was like, oh, she's on Chromacopia on like a late album song. That's really cool for her. I went back to that the other week. That is the third most played song on that album by a wide margin. It has
I'm
over
not
a
surprised.
hundred million plays now, and I think a lot of that is like that swell at the end of her voice and his production and all of it coming together. Man, I think there's potential for a lot of future collaborations that she opened herself up to with that feature. And I think that hopefully, like Chapel, she's going to carry the momentum from this album and this year into that Coachella performance and steal the show.
Yeah, I really, really hope so, man. I'm rooting for her. I'm gonna be streaming her set with a gigantic smile on my face because that's a bunch of flowers that she deserves.
I agree. I agree, man. Glad you picked that one as well. My next one is God, all mine are so obvious. Caliuchis, Orchidas. This was honestly probably my front runner until I listened to it and Brat back to back. And I was like, I love them equally, but I listened to Brat more. I'm gonna give it the edge. Callie never misses. This album is flawless. It's going back to her last full Latin release, Sin Miedo, back in 2020. I think she only got better at this style since then. This album's a little more diverse and a little more dimensional than that one is. Maybe her most genre bending to date, but still undeniably Cali at every turn. All of these songs have performed incredibly well from a streaming perspective. We know she has another album already. She released a deluxe edition to this, as well as that other song, Never Be the Same, or whatever that one was, as a Lucy earlier this year. She had a baby. I don't know if she got married to Don Toliver or not, but she's been very busy and has not stopped working either. The fact that this dropped in the midst of all of this stuff happening in her life just shows like she can lock in whenever she's in the studio and just put out a classic when she wants to. And this era will be remembered, like looking back, man. Did you go back to this album at all this week?
Oh yeah. This album is so gorgeous. And you know what sets Callie apart from a lot of other pop artists? None
What's
of
that?
this felt manufactured. Her personality is all over this thing. All of the inflections, she hits every note, just every little
Yeah.
piece and like attention to detail on every single track. It's all there on purpose. And I gave this a 9 when it's one of my runner-ups. It wasn't going to be my next one, but it is one of my runner-ups because, like I said, man, I mean, I when I reviewed it, I loved this album. It's fantastic. There's really only the one song that I don't feel fits on the album. And
Mhm.
honestly, if she had taken that song off, I probably would have given it a 10. You know, like it's one of those.
That's fair, man. I'm glad you loved it. It nine or higher, I'm definitely not going to argue with. Yeah, she definitely didn't miss a beat in terms of her release schedule by having the baby this year, but she did not perform live very much. Hopefully, we get back to more of that next year. I don't remember. Was she on the Coachella lineup? I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
think,
Maybe.
well, either way, I think she will be hopefully hitting some tour dates next year. And I
I
think
always
that she'll
forget
be
that she's with.
doing arenas by the head and be the headliner. I wouldn't be surprised.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean that seems to be kind of like the stepping stone, right? But I always forget that she's with Don Toliver. I think that that's great for them.
It's great. I feel like she's so famous, like in her own realm of music, that he's just referred to as like her guy. It's not, oh, that's Don Toliver's girl. Like I love that. That's just like the genders have been reversed because she's such a boss. Love Callie. I got one of like the last 2 years on the Spotify rap things by being one of her top listeners. I get the like videos sent from her.
Right.
And you can go see like multiple of your top artists and anybody that has Spotify, I'm sure you've noticed this. And like a lot of them this year were like them just talking about a track, which was dumb. Last year was a lot more like personalized towards the fans, thanking them. Callie's are always so ridiculous and so like hilarious but beautiful and sincere. She's always like I think this year she's standing in front of like a Porsche 365 and um just always wishing you a blessed year, always just in her, trademark Cali baby voice thing. It's great, man. Really
Love that
fun to
for
be a
her.
fan of her. What is your next pick, man?
Magdalena Bay, Imaginal Disc.
That's mine as well.
I
Why
knew
is
it.
it
I knew
yours?
it would be, you know. All right. Well, this album is crazy. So I did a little math. I did a little math as I'm known to do. I have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven nines in the pop world this year, which is a
Damn.
large amount of nines for me in pop. You and I were kind of both enamored with Mercurial World when it came out, and we both loved that album. And they took a little bit of a different direction on this one, but my God, man, this album scratches an itch I did not know existed. There are it feels shorter than it is, which is a trademark of a fantastic pop record.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something like 50 minutes plus, and it feels like it's 30 minutes because everything is so interesting. I love the little like prog rock, like 70s and 80s prog rock elements that
Yes.
they pulled in on this one. I loved this album, man. It's like progressive pop music, and oh man, that is right up my fucking alley. Vampire in the Corner and Tunnel Vision are both fantastic tracks that I keep coming back to on a regular basis.
And see, there's something like everybody's going to gravitate towards more because I'm always Killing Time, Image, Death and Romance when I go to that album. I think that
Yep.
that album is just fucking great, man. You and I are the biggest champions of Mercurial World as an album. I think it was like in our top two or three back in 2021. What is up with Magdalena Bay and the Marias kind of being on the same release schedule, by the way? I'm not going to complain about it, but
What is it? The Father John Misty, Kendrick Lamar sort
the
of tick.
pipeline is real, man. Yeah, dude, this is just one hell of an album. I feel like they didn't quite break through to like the highest echelon of pop, but they did take a major step up commercially with this one. The Imaginal Autumn from Brat Summer memes were everywhere when this thing dropped. People really seem to take hold of it. I've talked to many people who had no idea who they were before this album that are able to identify them now by sound alone when I play them. Like
Not hard.
it's crazy that they did this in just by being themselves, really. I think this album is more like not obscure, that's not the right word, but a little less accessible than Mercurial World was, and people liked it more. That's interesting and that's great for where pop music is, which I guess has kind of been the general point of this episode in general. But yeah, man, this freaking album rules. Big fan of it.
But I'm glad you liked it too. We knew that we were gonna like it going in, but I really didn't think that it was gonna speak to as many people as it did, and I'm really glad that that happened for them.
I only have one more like really strong runner up, but then I have good amount of notable releases to dive into. The other strong runner-up for me is Porter Robinson's Smile, which feels so weird to officially put in the pop episode and not the EDM episode. Man, was it weird for you?
It was, man.
Dude, I mean, it's undeniable. You could almost put this just in like an indie rock episode at times too. Like this
Yeah.
album is him saying fuck it. Like he's always I think Nurture was on the border a lot of times in terms of what it is and what it wanted to be, but its overall use of electronics made it feel more that than anything. He has stepped not just like a foot in the pop world. This is his whole body throwing into it, and I would expect no less from him. I'm a little surprised it's not a separate project like what is it, Virtual Riot? Is that his other
Yep.
one?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he didn't like segment it in because it does sound it sounds even so different than Nurture was. Nurture, he's using a lot more effects on his voice. This is a lot more chest voice, a lot more sincere songwriting, a lot more just like him playing a guitar with some bare bones electronics and band behind him. And I'm shocked that I ended up liking it as much as his other projects. I honestly, like, there was times I didn't know that was going to be the case. Cheerleader and Knock Yourself Out were great. I like parts of Russian Roulette, but there's like moments on that album, especially the first few listens, where I was like, man, I don't know if this is for me, but hell if it did not win me over and just continue to be one of my most played albums of the year. I think he had two songs in my top Spotify rap thing. I know this one landed in your top albums as well, but what were your kind of thoughts on it this year?
Look, man, I don't know what my schedule is like on the 5th. Bitch, I'm Taylor Swift.
Bars.
Um, Bars. Man, I'm gonna slightly push back on you. Porter Robinson has always done whatever the fuck he wants with this moniker. You know what Virtual Riot's gonna sound like. So that's what it is. Or Virtual Self, is that it? Virtual Self?
Maybe
What is
that's it.
Virtual
Yeah,
Riot?
I
I think it's
mixed
Virtual
those
Self.
two up. I think it's
Um,
virtual self. You're
but
right.
but but we know what Virtual Self is gonna sound like. We know what it's gonna sound like when he collabs with Batty. And Porter Robinson has always changed it up. Since his Spitfire days, since his Worlds days, since his Nurture days. I mean, if you were to compare 100% in this bitch to any song on Nurture and told somebody who had never heard Porter that it's the same artist, they would call you a fucking liar. That's amazing. I
Hmm.
am all in for Porter Robinson doing what he wants. It is admirable. Like you said, he has his entire soul and being well within the pop realm of things, but decides to tap dance all over whatever genre norms there are. There's plenty of EDM on this. There's some happy hardcore. There's some interesting vocal filters, but everything blends.
Hmm.
Everything is so Porter. Everything has that musicality that he's known for, and God, this
Yes.
this album is such a good time to listen to, man. Cheerleader being I think that was the lead single, right? Is
Yeah.
just incredible of a song.
So sugary.
It's only 40 minutes. This dude made one of the most perfect pop albums of 2024. And if you had told me in 2010 that the dude I was seeing at a small unknown rave in Southern California, that this guy would go on to, make pop music, I would tell you, nah. But that's what happened, and I love that for him.
Yeah, the 20-year-old on stage in H&M clothes at a club in the Wind that I saw is definitely not the same person on stage now performing. But God, I love this. I love him just as much, maybe even more now.
I love that
Um,
we both saw him in his Spitfire era. I think I saw him
yes.
twice in that era, and I will always cherish those memories.
It it's one of my favorite memories as well, seeing him just it was a weird night. Lance Bass was in the club. Just a
You
weird
love that.
atmosphere.
You love
Great.
that.
One of my favorite Vegas nights that I will always cherish, and he is definitely a part of that. All right, man. That's all my strong releases. Did you have any like heavy hitter top contenders you wanted to talk about before we like kind of broaden things to just ones you want to mention?
No, no, I think that's probably fine. I mean, I have a couple of other nines, but they weren't really in the conversation for my favorite favorites. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean?
All right, well, let's get into those here with just notable releases. I think some of mine here you're going to disagree with. In fact, I'm pretty sure you will. First up for me is the Ariana Grande album, Eternal Sunshine. Not my favorite album of hers, but going back to it, I think it's lean. I think her voice is still phenomenal. I think her writing is great. I think that it's kind of a little bit the album feels like even though it came out before it feels like an afterthought to everything going on with how big Wicked is right now and that whole press tour and phenomenon, but I think on its own, just judging it as an album, it is unquestionably one of the best pop and R&B albums of the year. What's your next notable release?
Unquestionable, huh? I'll question that. I have one, two, three, four, five fours that I gave out this year, and that was one of them. Um, I
Disagree.
fair, fair. One that might actually surprise you that I also gave a 9 to when it came out is Lucky Days Algorithm.
Great album. That's on my notable releases as well. We knew
Yeah,
that one was going to be great.
right. It's one of those R&B albums that like Gallant did, where he incorporated a lot of guitar. Lucky Day kind of took that and went full Stevie Wonder with it, and I loved that. There's like actual like rock moments on this, and Lucky Day's confidence and energy behind his voice translated into something that I really, really liked. Paralyzed with Ray is just a gorgeous piece of music. You
Yeah.
introduced me to Lucky Day, and I'm glad for it. So thank you for that.
Of course, man. I think he's at his best right now. I think he's criminally underrated still somehow. This album is phenomenal. I know it got some awards nominations and stuff, and that's deservedly so, but I still don't feel like enough people are talking about this guy or these albums that he's putting out because they are just insane, man. That's You is just one of those songs that there's before you hear it and there's after you hear it, man. That song is beautiful. I think it's one of his best to date, and I think there's a few songs on the album like Soft that are in that
Right.
same conversation. It's a great album, also on my list.
Great.
Uh, Another one I think you're going to disagree with, but I'm a fan. Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft. I don't even remember what I gave this. Probably like a 7. I don't remember being blown away by it when it came out, but it's grown on me quite a bit since then. I tend to like all of her projects, and her last one took a while to grow on me as well. That one a little longer because that's such a long album. This one pretty accessible, pretty lean. I like a lot of the songs, Lunch, Birds of a Feather, and such. I think it's a good album. I don't think it's a great album, but worth noting at the least. What about you?
You're such an Antonov head.
Fuck you.
Yeah, I didn't like this one. And you know what, man? I've actually talked to a lot of people about music this year outside of the podcast,
How
and a
dare you?
lot of people have told me that this is probably one of their favorite albums of the year. I don't get it, man. I just don't, and that's okay. I don't have to get it. If it resonated with you, it resonated with you. I I I think there's so much Lana Del Rey influence on this. I think that there's some moments on the album that I really enjoy, you know.
Mhm.
Birds of a Feather, pretty good, pretty good song, you know.
Pretty good track.
I
Yeah.
I is what it is.
Yeah. I knew this one was not going to be on yours. You mentioned still not liking it as recent as a few weeks ago, but I like it too much to not mention, so I had to live my truth there.
Hey, that's
What's
fair.
your next pick?
Let's see here. I don't even know if this is considered pop, but there's so much pop in it that I'm going to call it. London Grammar put out their album,
Mm.
The Greatest Love. I'm going to call it pop because there's a lot of pop in this rock, and it probably wouldn't make my top rock albums. And I just really wanted to talk about this album in a positive light here. I gave it a 9 when we reviewed it, which is real. It's got this like British flair to it, a
Hmm.
lot of great UK like tropes and music. There's ballads calling bitches out and haunting vocal melodies. I mean, this album is fantastic, and it might not fit in any sort of traditional pop or R&B scaffolding, but I think that if we're talking about pop music in 2024, the scaffolding is being detonated, man. There really is no scaffolding. It's really what's happening around us.
Yeah, yeah, and much like my last few picks, this is one of yours that I'm going to disagree with. I did not give this a high score. I didn't really love it very much, and I didn't go back to it, so I can't say that I still don't. I just
Fair.
remember not being a giant fan of it. I'm sorry I did not throw any of the London Grammar tracks on our playlist this week for you to enjoy, but I'm glad
It's
you at
okay.
least remembered the album enough to go back and throw it on your list. I'll have to
Of
circle
course.
back to it at some point. I do like her voice. This album just didn't come together for me.
Yeah.
My next one, Empress of, for your consideration. This one could even border probably on the strong contenders if I really go back to it. It's been a while since I've gone back to this one, but I remember it being just a banger. And when I was kind of going through albums that came out this year, I didn't even have to think about it. When I saw this one, I was like, yeah, that one's worth noting. I again, I don't think this is like one of the best of the year, but hell of a fucking album. You remember this one?
Oh yeah. I remember not being a gigantic, as big of a fan of it as you were, but a couple of the tracks came on my playlist this week,
Hmm?
because I have my playlist or whatever, and I did enjoy pretty much every song on it. I just remember not being as enamored with it as you were. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's like a Latin pop R&B weird dance thing. It's a weird album. It came together for me, but I could see how it wouldn't rank as high for others. I do remember you feeling kind of like that. You were like, don't love as well.
Yeah.
What's your next pick?
Rachel Chinriri, what a devastating turn of events.
See, this is one that I was struggling. I was like, is this indie rock? Is this pop? But I do think like if Taylor released the same album, we'd call it pop. And I do think that this
100%.
is on that quality of songwriting and maybe even better. Don't shoot me. Why'd you pick this one?
This album is catchy as hell.
Hmm.
It is just a delight, John. And the storytelling that she has throughout this, the storytelling really resonated with me. And there's like there's just a lot of moments on this that go from fun piece of music to actual in-depth like life lessons. And I love that. You know what I mean?
Same, same. I went back to this one as well. It's in my notable releases, so I'm glad you brought it up. She's just great, man. I love her songwriting, and I feel like for the style of indie pop that she does, she has this unique personality flair that she throws into it to just differentiate herself from the others in that group. And I'm a fan as well, man. Great pick.
Good, good. I'm glad you were a fan, my man.
Not much to say about this one, but Remy Wolf, Big Ideas. It's a Remy Wolf album, which is to say, it's a really good pop album. If you like Remy Wolf, you probably really liked this album. Do you
Yeah.
remember, or did you have this one even on your honorables?
I mean, I remember reviewing it. I remember liking quite a bit of it. I think I didn't like it quite as much as you did, but track like Motorcycle was a good song, I think.
Yeah.
Cinderella is I think
Cinderella.
what my standout was. I gave it a
Soup.
6
Yeah.
when we reviewed it, but there's a lot of great moments on this. There were just a lot of moments that didn't quite resonate with me, you know. But as a Remy Wolf fan, you probably would like this.
Yeah. Do you have any more notables?
Yeah, we can go over one more. Let's see here. Tyla, Tyla.
Ooh, great debut album. Great debut album off the success of her track Water last year. I don't think as many of the other songs had the potential to become the hit that Water was, but that album front to back is just quality.
Yeah.
Another, I guess my last notable release to talk about is arguably a rap release. It's RM from BTS, his album Right Place, Wrong Person, an album you did not really like at all, but I fucking love. Still do. It's weird as hell, but I'm a big fan of it. So just figured I would give that one a shout out. It's not going on the best of rap playlist, but it's a fun album.
Yeah, and the like I said, pop could kind of be a catch-all this year, but
All right.
you know.
I got a few disappointing releases to touch on. We don't have to spend much time. Camila Cabello, CXOXO. We did not even cover this
I
album.
was gonna say, did we even review that?
No, I think we did talk about the first single with that Playboy Cardi track. Fucking disaster. I know some people seem to like it ironically. I think it's just fucking garbage. Dua Lipa, Radical Optimism. So the singles for this album are fucking great. Like some of
Yeah,
her best
Houdini's a
work
great
to date.
track.
The album cuts and the album itself just boring, lame, cookie cutter. Like she was almost there with another classic, man. This one just fell a little short. Do you feel the same?
Oh yeah, I gave it a 5 when we reviewed it, and
Yep,
I'm gonna stick right to that to that
fair.
to that rating, man. I mean, they're like you said, couple of great tracks, but no.
Yep. That's how I feel about the next one, Sabrina Carpenter, short and sweet. The entire world seems to love this one more than I do. And that's not even because I'm not a Sabrina fan. I genuinely like all of her work leading up to this album. I just don't like this album very much. It leans into all the aspects of modern pop that I don't enjoy. What about you?
You
Do
know,
you feel
I
any way about it?
yeah, I mean, I felt not great about it. It's not a fantastic album. I do want to just share a quick story. I know a guy. He
Hmm.
had told me prior to him going to Coachella that he really likes it when girls sing to him. And that was his way of saying that he likes pop music,
Sure.
specifically sung by, women. And so I made a playlist for him of all of the women on the Coachella lineup for last year. And I was like, definitely go see Chapel Brown. Well, come for set times, and Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter are on at the same time. His girl wants to go see Sabrina Carpenter, and so he went. Imagine his disappointment.
Oh,
I think
I
about
can't.
that all the time.
It's so funny you bring up that specific set because my wife and I were watching that as people who enjoy Sabrina's music, and we watched her set. We're like, at least the weekend one, we're like, she sounds bad. But then you go on like Twitter to everyone watching the stream, and it's just all stands with the inability to be even the slightest bit critical. They're like, that's how a star takes the stage. I'm like, dude,
Yeah,
you can literally hear her like choking on the dust. Like her piano is not working. There's a lot of this performance that's not going well. Whereas Chapel, on the other hand, that's probably one of the top four performances of the year.
yeah. I would agree with all of those things that you just said.
It's definitely an I was there Coachella performance. Like if you went this year and you saw the Chapel performance and you got in that crowd at a good spot, that's your memory, you know?
Yep.
Take that with you for however god much you paid for that festival. Taylor Swift, Tortured Poets Department, hated it. Not a fan. She just wrapped up the Never Ending Eras tour. Good for her. I'm glad it's over. I'm not a fan of this one. Are you listening to this one still at all?
I'm not listening to it still. I listened to it quite a bit on release day, and I liked it quite a bit more than you did. I think it got a lot
As it
more
should.
hate than it actually deserved. And coming
Oh
from an
no, it deserves it.
objective, no, it doesn't. There's a lot of
Re-releasing a
shit.
different version of it every week so you continue to take the number one spot away from any new artist who has an album coming out that might dethrone it is bitch move shit. I
But
don't care
do
if
you
it's
see this?
like
It's
I don't
happening
care
right
if
in
it's
front of our
free
eyes, John.
market. It's bullshit.
That has nothing to do with her music. It
I
has
mean the
nothing
music
to do with
sucks
the
though.
album. But
If
I
people are
disagree,
buying
man. I
this,
disagree, bro. Look,
who is buying a different version of this album every week?
all
It's not
all
even a good Taylor Swift album.
I'll agree. It is one of her worst. That doesn't mean it's bad. And to me, that's what it is. We can leave it at that.
We'll leave it that's enough in the middle for me to be happy. Last one I need to get out of my system, Tommy Richmond's Coyote. You let me down,
Ah,
Tommy. Everyone was hating on you after Million Dollar Baby. I supported you. I supported Devil is a Lie so much it was higher on my Spotify Wrapped than Million
yep.
Dollar Baby. This album is garbage. I fucking hate it. Not at all what I wanted as a fan, but maybe I'm in the minority there. I have not circled back to it. Don't really care to, but disappointing nonetheless. I guess arguably rap too at times, but it's going in
Sure.
there. Any thoughts on this one?
I mean, there are a lot of really interesting moments, and you can tell that he went into it with a lot of ideas that could have been fully fleshed out and done in a way that really benefited him. And I think that none of the ideas were fully realized enough.
I agree.
Um,
Um, yeah, what
Go
were you
ahead.
gonna say? No,
Well,
no, what were you gonna say?
I've got one more disappointing review that
Hit
we
me.
have to go over. It's the R&B pop playlist. R&B disappointing releases. Usher, bro. We got to talk about it.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you. I honestly completely forgot. We didn't talk about Justin Timberlake either. Two not just legends, but two people that are pillars of my taste going into the 2010s that are all-timers for me. They could release garbage albums like this for every year for the rest of their lives, and it would never make them mean less to me in terms of like the albums that I love of theirs, but God, this one was disappointing, man. I am such an Usher fan. I was so excited when it got announced, the Super Bowl thing, all of it. I think the Super Bowl thing was fun, but this, man, this was not it. There's a couple good songs on there, but man, very unnecessary at this stage in his career. So thank you for reminding me that one of my favorite artists of all time dropped an absolute dud this year.
Why you love me.
It is, it is. All right, man. Favorite song. What was your favorite jam this year? Pop song.
Ooh, favorite song of the year. I think I'm gonna have to go with Lejos de Ti by the Marias. That
Man, going
is
beautiful.
That's
Jesus,
probably my favorite pop song this year.
that
I think
shit's
I've listened to
gorgeous.
it a lot this year. I think you can go. So we shared our raps, and I believe that I've been spending my time splitting my streams between Tidal and Spotify, and I believe the Marias were on my top artists for Tidal, but not
Yep.
quite for Spotify. And I think I listened to Lejos de Ti on Tidal like 100 times.
And that's not even enough. You should go listen to it 100 more right now.
It didn't
Uh,
count. I don't scrabble my vinyl listens. You know what I mean? So
true, true. Yeah, and that one sounds great on vinyl. Love that album. I love that Maria's vinyl is not hard to get anymore. That's the real winner.
hey,
Porter Robinson, Cheerleader is my favorite pop song of the year,
banger.
going through everything. Just every time it comes on, that lead synth is so fucking good.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite pop artist 2024?
My favorite pop artist in 2024 is very easily Chapel Roan.
Great pick. I feel like that is probably the consensus favorite pick among a lot of people. I think it's crazy that it wasn't last year, like I feel
I
like
know.
the album was there. We all heard it. We're all like, this is great. And then it was like, it's the delayed reaction thing. Like, I mean, the live performances helped, but like the songs were out there. They were starting to do big. The Coachella performance was big. Good Luck Babe was really kind of the song that seems to have broken her to a different level, which was not what I was
Is strange.
expecting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's strange.
it's a good song, but it's very like not as broad as the rest of hers are. But man, maybe it's the notes she hits in it that appeals to more people.
Well,
Great pick.
you know what's funny to me, John, is that we every year after our album of the year list, we always start off January with a best of December.
Mhm.
And we didn't get around to Chapel until the best of December. And we actually covered the album this year, but it came out last year.
Oh
And
yeah, you're right.
I remember saying in that podcast, I have not gone back and listened to it. So maybe don't quote me, even though I'm trying to quote myself here. But if I had known that that album had existed prior to our pop album of the year playlist, that list might have been a little different because going into that album without knowing anything about it was so great. I had no idea who she was, what kind of workhorse she was actually going to end up being in the pop world. And I think if I had known about it and we had discussed it and reviewed it and I had had more time to sit with it, it probably would have been that big of a deal to me because you're right. I don't think anybody really knew what was happening by the time she had actually dropped that album,
No.
nobody knew who she was. And then all of a sudden everybody did. And it became this feeding frenzy,
Hmm.
both from the industry and managers and producers and festivals and also her fans. I mean, even the people who love her were doxing her fucking family on Facebook and like
Yeah.
that's got to be crazy, man. But you know what I really love about Chapel? She doesn't hold any punches, bro. She says exactly what the fuck is on her mind, and I love that for her.
And with artists like that, you never know how long they're gonna play by industry rules. So I would just say enjoy Chapel while she's here and she's
Oh
active,
yeah, no,
because people.
she'll be done in a few years because of the things that she's said, even though she's walked a lot of them back. So there's that.
Yeah. My pop artist of 2024 is Charlie, who we've talked about ad
Of
nauseum.
course.
So we don't need to get into that anymore, but it's very obvious. All right, man. Before we wrap things up, who are just some of your artists to watch in the genre going forward next year?
Okay, so I actually, if we're going, or let's talk about pop and R&B here for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
I am dying to know. We didn't talk about his album on this podcast. Maybe we should have. Omar Apollo.
Hmm.
Every single release this dude has just continues to
Gorgeous.
break whatever molds that you think that he's in.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, That's one. Lola Young, she's gonna have a year, bro. I feel it in my bones, bro. I hope that she
I
does.
hope. I hope.
I
Yeah.
really hope that she does. I think those are the ones, man. I think those are the ones that are really gonna do something. And if there's any artist that I'm actually just curious about what happens in the future, I would probably say Blue to Tiger. I'm very curious to see what happens to her in
Yeah.
the
Heck
future.
yeah, dude. Love the Blue to Tiger shout out. We're huge fans of her. She did drop an album this year that we probably should have mentioned as well. It is fantastic. Definitely should have been in our notable releases. But again, I feel like she's going to have to keep dropping albums like that to really, really get her
Yep.
name out there, which isn't fair. It should very much already be out there for the level of talent alone. I got a few. Benny, I think she will be dropping a new album this year, or this upcoming year, although that's not confirmed. She's due. FKA Twigs is dropping a new album in January. I think that's going to be really good. Hard Life, formerly Easy Life, finally came back with their new single this year. I think it's going to be finally time they release something official, like a project under this new name. I'm looking forward to that. And a little bit not under the radar in terms of name because the songs have tons of plays, but Jade, I threw a few songs of hers on the playlist this week. She is from a group called Little Mix, who I think was like a girl pop R&B group from the UK that was really big, and it's all kind of starting to go their own solo directions. She put out 2 or 3 singles this year that were all just really, really good. She announced she does have a full length coming, but it's not out quite yet, so I think that'll be sometime next year. Those are my picks, man. I feel like we have
Nice.
a lot of fun talent to look forward to, and I guess to bring this whole thing full circle back to Chapel, how she follows up "Good Luck, Babe" is going to be one of the key things to watch. She's been performing a new song in her live sets for months now. I would not be shocked if that surfaces as a single sometime next year. It'll be interesting to see what the reaction to that is now that I guess not that the honeymoon phase is over, but now that people are starting to be a little more critical, whether it's fair or not.
The wind in her
Looking
sails
forward
may
to it.
have turned to a breeze, but that doesn't really matter because if she's got the music to back it up, the music is what started all of this. So
Yep.
I hope people who are fans of music end up keep pushing her to where she's gonna be. But like you said, I'm not entirely certain of her future. I don't think anybody could be, you know.
Oh. We love fans of music. All right. That does it for us this week. Join us next week. We're going to be talking about our favorite rap albums of the year. I'm very much looking forward to that. Follow us on Instagram and Reddit if you want to keep up with all the latest updates and follow along with our rotating playlist. You can find the link to that in the show notes. I'll have a best of rap playlist up on there after this episode. Should be really fun to listen to. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.